theory, that is Stephen Krashen's monitor model. Monitor model is a combination of 5 hypotheses, and these 5 hypotheses are prescribed by this person, Professor Emeritus of Education, Stephen Krashen. And Stephen Krashen basically proposed this hypothesis to observe the scenario of second language learning. How and in which way the second language learning might be most effective, and in which way this language learning will be effective for the adult learners. Because we know that the theories and the methods will be initiated for the necessity. Understanding the necessity of second language learning, especially for the adult learners, Stephen Krashen, Professor Emeritus, proposed that those 5 hypotheses. These are the 5 hypotheses proposed by Stephen Krashen. These are the acquisition and learning hypothesis, monitor hypothesis, natural order hypothesis, the input hypothesis, and the effective filter hypothesis. The combination of these 5 hypotheses is called monitor model. And this is effective in several ways, because if we would watch the videos and the video lecture of Stephen Krashen, he is still alive, you might understand quite easily. Rather, I will try my best to make you understand these 5 hypotheses. The first one is the acquisition and learning hypothesis. That is quite common. That is acquisition, the learning process. There are 2 kinds of learning process. That is, acquisition occurs subconsciously and learning occurs consciously. Just for example, that the children learn language, that language learning occurs subconsciously, and that is called language acquisition. And we, the adult people, we learn language consciously. That is the language learning. And this hypothesis that if language learning is done the same way the children learn the language, that would be effective. And what is the logic over here? Stephen Krashen said that every people of this world, they eat food the similar way, they digest food in the similar way. In the same way, every language of this world can be learned in the similar way. That is the, if we follow the acquisition language learning process in everywhere, that would be effective. That is, the acquisition will be happening in every sphere of the learners. That means the natural way. The natural way, if you learn the language, the natural way, and that natural method is followed. If that natural method is followed for language learning, that will be effective. That is the linkage between acquisition and learning. And especially the theories are derived from the natural approach. Okay. That is the linkage between acquisition and learning. And this first hypothesis speaks about acquisition. The second one is the monitor hypothesis. Monitor hypothesis, everyone, every learner will have some conscious help to correct his or her mistakes. Every learner's idea, that is, he will have some confidence, he will have some language idea, and he will have some, not he or she, will have some preoccupied knowledge. So always knowledge, language knowledge, monitors your language skill. Just for an example, in the previous portion of our class, one student, he started reading that and he mispronounced a word. And then next time, she corrects that mistakes. That means every time your language knowledge will try to correct yourself. Every time your knowledge of language will supervise your language production at the time of writing and the time of speaking. Such kind of supervision is possible when the language learner will be conscious about the language knowledge. And such kind of supervision quality of every language learner is called monitor hypothesis. You yourself will be supervising your wrong pronunciation or the misspelled writing or the structure of your writing, everything. Such kind of self-supervision is called monitor hypothesis. And you yourself will be monitoring your language production, like speaking, writing. That is monitor hypothesis. Suppose if you want to deliver a lecture at the very initial stage, you may make some mistakes. And for the cause of your conscious self, you said, oh sorry, I read it once again, or I will say it once again, and you will correct your mistakes. And such kind of supervision from every learner is called monitor hypothesis. Third one is natural order hypothesis. Natural order hypothesis, natural order. Order means sequencing. As we have said that every language will have some sequential or chronological pattern. Chronological pattern means first time what we do. That means if you have to learn a language, what we will do? First we have to study from the alphabet. That means we have to know the alphabet. And next time we will go to word. Then next time we will go to phrase. Then next time will be structure or sentence. Okay. So the natural order hypothesis. If anybody wants to learn a language, he or she has to start from the natural order. And he said, Krashen said that this order is quite similar for every language. If you want to learn English language, you have to start with the alphabet, and then word, then sentence, structure, like that. And if you want to Arabic language, same thing will be happening. If you want to Spanish language, Italian, Bahasa Malaysia, any language, this natural order you have to follow. And if anybody wants to learn a language, he or she has to follow this sequential order. And if it is not so, language learning will not be followed. That means if you start from the structure of the sentence and try to make your language learning effective, that is not possible according to the hypothesis prescribed by Krashen. That is the natural order hypothesis. Fourth one is quite good, that is the input hypothesis. Input, you know, whenever I will click the button of the computer, that means it will be the input device. And the monitor and the screen, that will be the output device. Monitor will be the output device. According to Krashen, the input should be comprehensible. Input should be understandable. And if input becomes comprehensible, if input becomes understandable by the learners, then the output will be quite okay. There might be a question. What is understandable input? What might be the comprehensible input? Comprehensible input, like that he said, Stephen Krashen said that yes, you might, what you will do in your leisure time. Suppose you are not reading something for the betterment of your examination. Suppose you like to read a novel. Okay? So in your leisure time, you started reading that novel, and you understand that. Novel in the normal language, of course. That reading of your favorite novel is a one kind of comprehensible input. Let's move on to the, suppose we like to read newspaper, isn't it? Daily newspaper. And in the newspaper, the editorial page is quite dark. Suppose you like the sports page. So if you want to study the sports page of the newspaper with interest, and that you will easily enjoy the reading. And that reading with enjoyment will make you understand the language quite easily. Such kind of pleasure reading are maybe called comprehensible input. Suppose you like to have chat with your favorite friends. So you started chatting with your friends living in UK or USA. Okay. So through the chat, you are getting some input. Okay. So that is called pleasure reading and comprehensive language. Okay, there are some audio books. Okay. If we hear the audio book, your favorite history, moral stories, horror stories, any kinds of stories, that would be easily understood by the learners. And such kind of inputs are called comprehensible input. Okay? Okay. But there is a question over here. In case of input hypothesis, if every time you start reading and writing, even visualization, you see, that means the reading something with the picture. Okay. Reading something or some word that will assimilate with some familiar objects. That is called, that kind of reading or teaching can be used as a comprehensible input. In that comprehensible input, Stephen Krashen suggested a theory that is I plus 1. I plus 1. I, that means small I, not I mean myself, no. Small I. Small I indicates your knowledge of language. Small I is your level of linguistic knowledge. Every time, teacher will be putting a slightly above the linguistic knowledge of the learner. Okay? That means, suppose in 12th class, if you understand that the student might understand the simple sentence. Just for an example. What would be the I plus 1? You have to use simple sentence plus complex sentence. So simple sentence is familiar to the 12th class students. What you will do, you have to introduce them a slightly higher to the level of the concerned students. Every time if you put lecture or if you give class instruction according to the students' level knowledge, their knowledge will not be increased. So above, a little bit above, knowledge should be delivered. And in this way, and if the input is comprehensible, and if the input is done according to I plus 1, through this input hypothesis, language learning would be quite easy. Okay. Not okay. Fifth one is affective filter hypothesis. That is the last one. That means affective filter hypothesis, always there will be, what will be the barrier of language learning? According to Stephen Krashen, stress is the barrier of language learning. Stress. Stress of what? Stress of less marking in the examination. Stress of negative motivation. Stress of punishment. Naturally, the language learner might face. Why we feel afraid that, oh, I might make mistake in answering the question. Okay. And if this stress is more, language learning will not be offered. Okay. But Stephen Krashen can say that you have to be stress free. Okay. If language learning becomes stress free, then language learning will be offered. So Stephen Krashen said that less amount of stress will make the language learning better. So it might be if the stress filter, so you are learning language over here, and if your affective filter, that means your stress, if your stress is high, language learning will not be occurred. So, and language learning will be done if your affective filter, that means your stress is low. So low the stress, more better the language learning. And such kind of hypothesis, that is the affective filter hypothesis. That means language learning will be bird, language learning will be smooth, language learning will be variegated for the stress of the learner. So as less as the stress will be, the better the language learning will be. That would be the affective filter hypothesis. Okay. So this is the 5 hypotheses done by Stephen Krashen, and in combination of these 5 hypotheses are called monitor model hypothesis. Question. I might have some picture over here. Okay. So, if we summarize the idea, that is Stephen Krashen, Professor Emeritus of Education, proposed 5 hypotheses in case of language learning. First one is acquisition and learning hypothesis. That will be linked, that is acquisition is the subconscious way of language learning, and learning will be the conscious way of language learning. Monitor hypothesis, that means every time language learner will be supervising his wrong or his wrong usage of language. Such kind, it will occur within from every individual learners. That is monitor hypothesis. Natural order hypothesis, that means language should be learned in a sequential way. And input hypothesis, that means the input, the so easy and so comprehensible the input will be, language learning will be so the more better, the better. Okay, and in that case, incomprehensible input will be the input that will get you free, that will make you laugh, and you will read it, you will listen it, and through your reading of the moral stories, short stories, or something else, your language learning will be better. And the last one, affective filter hypothesis, less stressful. If the stress becomes less, your language learning will be better. So as far as it is possible, the language learner should be stress-free or out of afraid. That means it should be motivated by the instructor or the parents in a separate way. And in that case, motivation will be different. Okay, that would be a separate discussion. That means motivation will be in instrumental motivation. Okay, that means if you get a promotion, if you can learn language, that kind of instrumental motivation will make you less stressful, and your language learning will be quite good.